for a particular paragraph, if needed.
PS, as customary, what we usually do is remind accounting officers and team coming before the PSC of what the Legislative Body of Evidence Act, Chapter 108 states. Every person examined under this act who willfully gives false evidence shall be guilty of perjury. And that is a reminder to all accounting officers that if they're not in possession of the accurate information and they need time, they can request time and time will be provided so that they could provide PSC with such information. We expect all of the information to be provided to be accurate and that which can be substantiated. With that said, members, we have the Ministry of
Mr.
Public...
Chair, Mr. Chair, my apologies to interrupt you.
Yes.
Just for formality, I heard the PS say or the former PS who is still employed in the ministry. And then she mentioned two former employees, I think the engineer and someone else. Are they still employed with the ministry? I mean, because for completeness of our introduction.
That's a question, PS.
Honorable member, the former PS, as I would have mentioned, is still employed by the ministry. I would have only mentioned one other former staff, and that is the engineer, who is no longer employed with us. But all other members are within the employ of Ministry of Home Affairs.
Thank you, because I'm virtual. I'm just trying to make sure I get all the details. Thank you very much, PS.
Members, we have 30 paragraphs for 2017 and 35 paragraphs for 2018. I put paragraphs 671 to 686 for 2017 and 680 to 800 for the year 2018. The floor is open to all members. $780 to $800.
Mr. Chairman, like the Accountant General indicated that 671 must go in tandem with 670.
Yes, so we'll facilitate 670 going forward. Yes. Proceed,
So
member.
at 671, could the accounting officer tell PSC how was a blank bill of quantities evaluated and determined as against a price bill of quantities for the finalization of a contract?
Honorable member, I would ask that the former engineer respond to this question.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning,
You
Chair.
state your name for the record.
Donny Ramdalor, former engineer. Donny Ramdalor, former engineer,
Proceed.
Ministry of So, 670, the blank bill of quantity, what had happened is that normally 3 contracts are signed. 3 copies of the same contract are signed at the same time whenever we sign it. Now, 1 copy is for the contractor, 1 is for the ministry, and 1 is for the agency to which the project belongs. So, for some reason, the copy that was collected by the Auditor General, it was from the ministry. But this being a current project, it's basically run through the agency. So the working file was basically at the agency. So for some reason, the copy here at the ministry or there at the ministry was a tender document, which is just the same contract document without the relevant information inside.
No,
So that is why.
it can be the same document without the relevant information. If a contract is to be executed, details need to be stated in that contract. Price, duration, and all the other details, and it is only a contract when it is signed, parties agreeing to these details.
Through the chair, what had happened is that a tender document ended up in the contract file. It was by mistake. Subsequently, the original contract was presented.
To the audit office?
With all information. That is why they were able to determine the amount of overpayment. Because if they didn't have a price, they wouldn't have a figure.
So when was it, Chairman, when was it delivered to the Auditor General's office?
It was subsequently, it wasn't a very long time afterwards.
No, I understand subsequently, Chair, but this document, this is the 2017 report,
It would have been after the final print.
after this report came out. But these things are sent back to the ministry for them to clarify and provide for
The management letter submitted from the Auditor General.
Yes, so all of these things were submitted before it is put in this document. So what caused the delay on the part of the ministry to supply the Auditor General with the document that is necessary? That would have actually led to it coming into this report.
Correct.
The engineer will respond, Honorable Member.
At times, over the years that I've been there, sometimes the timing that we have the Auditor General meeting or when we have the report presented, it's within 2 or 3 days before printing of the document. So it doesn't really give us enough time to.
Mr. Chairman, I chuckled. The Auditor General will write a management letter to an agency, and an agency has at least 1 month to prepare responses.
We had a month.
So for you to tell me the meeting is going to be held just 2 or 3 days, and besides that, the gentleman has not answered the question. He's telling me about the contract. The Auditor General is saying an on-price bill of quantities is presented with the contract as against a price bill of quantities. Why was an on-price bill of quantities? Why we don't have the price? The contractor's price stated again, rates against everything. Why there was not in the contract?
That was because it was a tender document and not a contract. It was mistakenly placed in the that contract file.
And where was the price bill of quantities?
In the one that was present at the agency, and the contractor brought his copy as well.
And that was submitted to the Auditor General?
That was submitted.
And when it was submitted to the Auditor General?
It was. I do not have the exact date, but it was submitted subsequently.
Subsequently means anytime after the 31st of
September.
30th of September
2018.
2018. And this would have been a query for 2017 project. Could we get a date when it was submitted? If it was submitted, could I ask the Auditor General to verify that this was submitted?
And when?
Can the audit office provide us some assistance here?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the meeting. The issue at hand is that the signed contract document the ministry had, instead of putting the price bid that they would have gone to tender with, instead of that becoming part of the contract document, for whatever reason, it wasn't placed there. So somebody decided instead to put in the on-priced bill, the blank bill. We would have used that document to examine when we would have prepared our report. In order for us to get our overpayments or to verify the works, we would have used a valuation, which would have been priced. But it was an observation that the contract document had these on-price bills of quantities inside. After this report would have been submitted, the ministry would have presented, they probably went back and checked their records, and in 2018, I can't remember the exact date, but in 2018, they would have presented that document, that bill of quantity to us, indicating that this should have been in the contract document instead. We would have reviewed those bills to see that the prices and so what the contract sum would have conformed with what was presented on the valuation. So at the time of reporting for us, we did not get that price bill of quantities in 2018. Most likely when we would have been finalizing our the subsequent report, and we would have gone through prior matters, we would have looked at that to determine that it was actually a price bill of quantity that should have been there. So it was in 2018 that they would have presented that to us. Unfortunately, I don't have that price document with me here.
But a follow-up, Mr. Chairman. A price bill of quantities is considered a part of the contract. So a contract without a price bill of quantities is not a properly executed contract.
Mr. Chair, it would, in our opinion, it would have to form part of the signed contract agreement, so it would not have been, for want of a better word, a proper completed contract at the time. Because if situation arises that you need to refer to that document maybe for a variation to get the rates, I'm not sure how they would have gotten those rates. And that's why we would have made it an observation. Because you're executing a contract, the contract is there, you're administering this contract, you're preparing valuations, but how are you preparing these valuations? This document, you don't have the contractor's rates there. And remember, we were auditing a year after. So they would have been executing the works using a deficient contract document only until we would have picked it up. Then they realized that the document is deficient.
So the question arises, Mr. Chairman, how did the ministry prepare interim payment certificates from a file that did not have a price bill of quantities? What rates were you using?
All right. As was mentioned, 3 copies are signed of the contract. For the current works, the agency is the working file. From there, the copy that the agency has, that was the one that was subsequently presented to audit. So that had all the requisite information.
And what was the agency here?
Guyana Prison Service.
And what would have been your role as the engineer to facilitate the payments on the because this is maintenance and other works that are being done. It's not a capital project.
It was a course.
So
You were using your copy that you had at the ministry.
No, the working file for current work is generated at the prison because they would normally prepare the
yeah, but the
payments.
point is what you check that against. When the agency sent in documents asking for releases to payment, what file did you use to check and verify that this is in keeping with the rates and the bills?
No,
if you don't have a price bill of quantity in your file at the ministry.
It was us that prepared and sent to the we prepared the payment.
But you're making that worse. Where you prepare from? If you prepare from an on-price bill.
No. There's hold on, I am getting confused a little here.
Listen, member, one member at a time. Member Edgel has the floor. When he finish clarifying, allow the member to respond.
Yes. If you are preparing for payments to send to the agency to verify, you got to look at some numbers, rates, and do calculations.
All right, one, we have the rates digitally. All our rates, whenever...
Wait, tell me digitally what you mean?
No, all right, in the time of verifying arithmetically the errors, we have the rates for all the projects. So when we're verifying the numbers, what the contractor bid, that there's no error in it or so, we would normally save all the rates. That's one way. 2, we collect a copy from the agency, and we scan it, and we keep it. So we have all the rates already.
I'm being confused, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, can I have a word, please, after my call?
I am asking a simple question. Contract management is a simple, straightforward process. You have a contract that has terms and conditions and a price. In order for a contractor to be paid, he makes certain requests by way of an interim payment certificate, application for that. You are managing the project. You have to be able to examine what he's requesting, do measurements on the ground, check your file to ensure that the rates of calculations are correct based upon what the contract requests. If you don't have the price bill of quantities, what was the source document that you were using to prepare and approve those payments as requested by the contractor?
One is not that we don't have the price bill of quantity, we do.
Where you had it, it was not in the file.
Well, the working file is the file from the agency.
But you told me that you prepare, not the agencies.
No, we have a copy of it. We collect it in between. It's not fixed there. We take a copy if we need rates, we take it and we send it back whenever the payment
So
is
why
out.
when the Auditor General was examining this, you didn't provide that information to him?
When the Auditor General asked for the files, the copy that was at the ministry was used, and that was the copy that had the problem.
The copy that the ministry had in the file, which was you at the ministry handling that, had no price. Where was the document with price that guided you for approval of rates?
The same copy that the Guyana Prison Service had.
But why didn't you provide that to the auditors when they were audited?
So when the documents are being collected, sometimes we don't have the full list. It doesn't come to me directly, for example. So it's presented to the accounts department, and they would get the files up and send it straight to the audit office.
Chair, I'm a bit confused and I want some clarity, so I want to go back.
Go ahead.
So there are 3 copies of this bill of quantities, right?
Correct.
Where the 3 copies are again?
One with the contractor, one with the
Contractor,
ministry, and one with the
Ministry
agency.
and the agency. And the agency in this term is the prison service.
Correct.
Which one had the unpriced bill of quantity?
The copy that was at the ministry.
At the ministry. So the one at the prison was accurate, and the one that the contractor had was accurate.
Correct.
When you had to facilitate payments and all the necessary documentation, you utilized the one at the prison
The
service.
Guyana Prison Service. Correct.
When the Auditor General requested to audit this project, you submitted documents from the ministry.
I wouldn't say the accounts department submitted.
The Accounts Department submitted documents from the ministry.
Correct.
The file at the ministry, who keeps it? The Accounts Department?
The accounts department.
Okay, so all the documentation for the execution of this project was facilitated when you executed it and you measured the work and everything. You used the one that the prison
At
service
the prison
has.
service. Correct.
And subsequently, when the Auditor General found that the issue, it had to be corrected.
Correct.
How was it corrected?
We requested a copy from the prison service.
Requested a copy from the prison service, and that is what was submitted
That was
to,
what was submitted.
to the Auditor General.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Patterson?
That's simple.
Thank you. I was about similar lines because I think that something is there. First and foremost, I'd like to find out from the engineer because he just confirmed the accounting officer keeps the original, because what you're speaking about are 3 copies of the original signatures. Can you tell me if within the ministry, if you have copies, photocopies, if you don't, that normally you give to your site workers and inspection persons, copies of the original, because what the Auditor General is speaking to is the originally signed documents. So when you go in inspection, is it not right you take a copy or whatever in what form, scanned or whatever, to your inspection so that you could verify, see what has been measured? Is that not the correct procedure, or is that not what procedure is being employed?
Exactly, that's what happened. We would normally copy the bills. Whenever there is inspection, we walk with the bills, a copy of it.
can I ask the PS now, because it seems to be a bit of a confusion, that are you or do you or are you not the official, what should I say, reservoir or repository of all the original signed contracts? And these, and in your ministry, does these originally signed contracts be left with the engineers that are doing the actual work? How is it done in the ministry?
Honorable Member, over the years and at present, all the copies of the contracts are not kept in the office of the Permanent Secretary. It is kept in the Accounts Department. However, we can put systems in place to keep it in the office of the Permanent Secretary, providing their space.
Okay, PS, I'm not querying that. I'm just ensuring that the procedure which myself and I remember
The one copy.
Mike Paul explained about it, that the originals are under the control of somebody you designate.
Correct. All copies are with the
So it's
Accounts
studied,
Department for storage.
on somebody under your control at all times.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm putting this directly for guidance from the Auditor General. The Ministry of Public Security in 2017 executes a contract. The Permanent Secretary signs that contract with the contractor. In that file, there is no price bill of quantities. The agency ends up with a bill, and that is price, and the contractor ends up with a bill that is price. But the ministry has no bill that is price. Mr. Chairman, would I be allowed to complete it? Could the Auditor General explain to us why is it that you need 3 copies, and what are the balance and checks that are required to ensure that 3 copies of the same bill is kept by the 3 parties involved?
Chair, I'd ask my engineer to answer.
Go ahead. Mr. Chair, the number of copies of a contract might vary. It's not standard as 3, but of course you would want the executing agency to have a copy. You would want the sister agency to have a copy there. And of course the accounts department might have 1, right? So that's 3 at minimum. However, this is a case where the audit office is carrying out routine physical verification on a selected project. We have spoken at length in this same meeting about project files, where engineers are required to keep project files. Bear in mind that when a contract, when you go to tender, basically what happens, that tender document becomes the contract document. All that is removed is the instructions to bidders. So we could not determine how is it you're making copies and a blank is left into this one. Now, even if the ministry has a document there and they're preparing valuations that we're using to inspect, remember when we do these physicals, we examine the contract document, yes, but we use a valuation. That valuation is based on your price bill of quantities. Bear in mind, we examine the entire process from tendering right down to final certificate. Sometimes during the evaluation, you have arithmetic corrections, you have some changes, maybe any modification. That's why we look at all of these source documents. So the document that was presented to us, we do believe that it's only at that point in audit they realized that their document is deficient. Maybe the engineer he was mentioning scanned copies of the price bill. However, that wasn't presented to us. The problem is record keeping, and if the engineer had a project file that he was maintaining with all the different phases of the project, you would have definitely realized that your document is missing some kind of part. Also, I don't want to go down that line. If you're going to issue copies of contract documents to whichever agency, even the beneficiary, sometimes you would put a blank bill because we can't put the prices there so that they can see what is the scope of works to be done. You have to ensure that all the documents contain the same things. They can't be different from each other. So it's a case here where the one presented to audit did not have the price bill. However, we were hearing that the one at the agency had the price bill. So yes, you might do three copies, you might do 5, you might do 7. However, all have to carry the same information inside. And of course, you need the price bill that the contractor would have priced there because it contains basic rates, it contains all other rates that you have to use. So I think it's an error on the part of the ministry in terms of record keeping.
When you say, advisor, that you don't want to go down that line, we expect the advisors to give us the advice so that this committee can function effectively. And if it has to go wherever, let it go.
Of course, Mr.
We
Chair,
don't want
noted,
you
but-
to curtail your advice to this committee. All right? Member
Noted.
Maipa?
So I wanted to ask, when the ministerial tender board made the award, they would have had to have a bill of quantities in front of them. And before these copies are made, there had to be a bill of quantities, a singular one. Based on their tender board award, they will make the award, and when that is awarded and they go into contract signing, then is when they will make these copies. So the original, I'm assuming, would have had to have the numbers. So I'm still, and that original is kept at the ministry based on what I'm told here. So if the original file has a blank bill of quantities, it means that the copies that went to prison and to, where else? The other agency, how they got numbers if the original was blank. Chair, may we ask the engineer to provide an answer?
Go ahead, engineer.
When we say copies, I think we may have. When we say copies, there's actually three documents that were signed. So it's like 3 originals. So it's 3 separate documents, not one document that is signed and then photocopy. So there are 3 separate documents that are signed.
3 separate documents are signed.
Yes.
Good. So okay. So the third bill of quantities, or the first, whichever one, the one that the ministry has, that was empty with no number, that the contractor would have had to fill out all 3, or he fills out 1?
No. So when he fills out his bid, basically at that point it's a bid. So that original, that still considers a bid. We'll make the contract based off those prices.
Yes, the contractor has, this is the contractor's bill of quantity, and he fill it out and he submit this for the ministry to evaluate.
Correct.
The ministry has evaluated it, and it came to the tender board to award.
Correct.
The contractor was awarded the contract as the lowest responsive bidder. This now is what the ministry will use to make into a contract.
Correct.
And when they make it into the contract, there is the bill of quantities in this
Correct.
that has the numbers.
Correct.
How much for what? So how did you arrive, how did the ministry arrive at an empty bill of quantities with the 2 other copies having bill of quantities?
I think it's a genuine mistake. Yeah, it could be at the time of whenever it was being copied, the 3 original to be copied. It could be what we came up with is that it was a tender document that actually ended up there, one that is without the requisite information inside.
Mr. Chair,
Just before,
Still has the floor.
so what measure is in place right now so as for us to not have a reoccurrence of this issue, or an issue of this nature, where you have the actual document with the number, but somehow at the signing of the contract, you end up with one that is blank?
Honorable member, the ministry has put in place proper revision of contract documents during the preparation, and regular checks will be made to ensure that all relevant documentations are in contract files.
But the former PS that we have here, is that not the system that you had in place?
Yes, honorable member.
I'm not hearing you clearly.
Yes, honorable member.
So if you had that system in,
At the time when we were doing contracts, I guess the staff,
can you pull down the mic a little bit?
at the time when we were doing contracts, the project department was on the staff, and I guess it's a genuine mistake, probably putting the documents together, because what I would do is check one of the document on sign-in, make sure that everything is okay, and you would think that the other documents will be the same because it is photocopying. But I know that at the time, we only had 2 engineers, and it was very overwhelming for them.
Honorable member, if I may also add to the implementation, the capacity within the projects unit has since been boosted with the employment of several engineers in an effort to better monitor and supervise the projects. Do you need me to list the staffing that we have put in place so thus far?
Mr. Chair,
Is the
Go
chairman
ahead.
asking?
Go ahead, member.
I didn't answer that. Is the chairman to answer that?
I hear the explanation from the engineer and from the former PS. I hear the explanation. I'm not saying I'm satisfied because this contract was fraught with several issues. It's a small contract, $3 million. Just over $3 million. The start date was not included when this contract can start. How long the contract will last for was not listed. The defects liability period for the contract was not stated. The price bill of quantities is not in the contract. And an overpayment of 200 and something thousand was made. All of that are genuine mistakes. Basic things in a contract. What date it gonna start? How long it gonna last for? The defects liability period. All of that was missing from the same contract. We got a genuine mistake. So something was really not functioning in the department, and I'm hearing it was understaffed. But this was $54 million the maintenance project had to manage. $54 million. Not a big portfolio, $54 million. The Auditor General examined 13 contracts out of this $54 million.
The PS said that the former PS said that there were shortages of staff in that department. How many is the department now well endowed with sufficient staff, and more so, how much staff would have filled the gap to satisfy the shortages that existed?
Honorable member, thus far, we have 1 operations officer, 4 engineers, civil, 1 architectural engineer.
Could you state the number of the amount of staff that
7.
satisfy the shortages that existed?
7 thus far, but we are still exploring options to employ more in the future as we get space to accommodate them.
Okay.
We have 7 thus far.
Mr. Chair, there are a number of, at 673, we have another contract, which was awarded ministerial tender board for the renovation of Mazaruni Dormitory, ceiling, floor, and some windows to the sum of $4.9 million. It went to the lowest of 4 bidders. The engineer's estimate was $7 million. So this is a very interesting project. $2 million below the engineer's estimate. The contract was signed on the 28th. of November 2017 for 6 weeks for completion. There were no defects liability period that could be determined. 4.886 million were paid to the contractor for physical works. And out of that 4.8, let me get the exact figure, 4.886, 869 was overpayments that the Auditor General found. Question number one, was this project completed at 4.886 payment?
Honorable member, may I permit the engineer to speak?
Yes.
At that point, yes. We had considered it closed at that point.
So, what was the final cost of this project?
It would have been 4,886.
4,886. Now, my follow-up to that, what was not done, or what was done that you paid less than the contract sum, right? And an overpayment of almost 900,000 was made.
Right. The principal part of the overpayment was there was a requirement to have expanded metal on the windows. The requirement was to have 6 gauge. Now, the 6 gauge metal of those type, it's not very popular in the country. It's something that you cannot readily go and buy.
The engineer made this. Engineer write up the scope for this contract, right?
Correct. At the time they had enough. Yeah, no, it was us. At the time, Dalip had enough, and some guy in Barbies had some too. So we prepared a contract to go ahead with it. At the time of execution, he couldn't get the required 6 gauge. So he went ahead and put on a 10 gauge. So during the physical verification, it was noted that this wasn't the 6 gauge, it was the 10 gauge that he had used. So it was counted as works not completed. So that represented majority of the payment. The contractor subsequently refunded the difference on the overpayment. So project was closed.
So the 10 gauge would have been a lesser quality than the 6 gauge.
It was a lesser quality, but the reason we had to proceed with it because it poses a security threat. This was in the dormitory where the prisoners sleep. So if we don't have something on that window, it possesses a serious security threat.
Right. But the contract, in order to change from 6 gauge to 10 gauge, needed to receive authorization from the project manager.
Yeah, it was an on-site decision that we have to have something.
But you still got to document it.
It wasn't. That's where we erred.
So if you didn't document it and you tell the man go ahead, and the Auditor General come, and he put in an inferior quality, but he was paid for the regular quality. What you call that?
Oh.
Because if you give a man an instruction to use a lesser gauge, which will have a price difference, that need to be documented. And if you give the man instructions to put on a lesser gauge and still pay for the original gauge, what do you call that? How do you define that?
So it was an error from our side. It was an error from our side.
Yeah, error. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm making note that the contractor did not unilaterally put on a lesser gauge that led to this overpayment. It was an agreement between the project team and the contractor. And if there was an agreement for a lesser gauge with a price variation, that should have been documented and the monies deducted.
Go ahead, ma'am. So, engineer, this is your project that you oversaw.
Well, I basically look over all. I would have
Yeah. So this is a technical thing.
It
So you have to prepare a certificate of completion for this payment to be honored.
correct,
So you had to sign all the documents
correct,
to say that yes, this work is completed. Accounts department, go ahead and pay this contract.
correct.
And the accounting officer at the time and all the other superiors there relied singularly on your advice.
Correct.
And if the Auditor General did not pick up this project, then it could very well be that that contractor would have received monies that... Well, he already received it. It very well means that this would not have been seen as an overpayment and the government lost in terms of not getting value for money.
It was a genuine error from our
No. We
side.
can't keep accepting genuine error. We have to understand what is it here that is the issue. This is just, what, 10% of the ministry's expenditure, AG? Or less than 10%. And it is the technical officers like yourself who the chief accounting officer or the permanent secretary, even the ministers, it is people like you who they depend on for guidance to ensure that taxpayers' money are accounted for. So as technical officers, one would expect you guys to do your job. When you prepare that document that said certificate of completion and you signed it off, it is your word that the permanent secretary has to work with, because she is of the opinion that when you jump into the government vehicle and say you're going to the site to measure, that is what you're going to do. And she is of the opinion that when you sign that document, you're signing it from verifying that you're supposed to do as the technical officer. And that is clearly not what happened here. Because as you said, permission was given for there to be a change. It was not documented. You prepared the document of payment, and that document of payment went to accounts. Accounts honored it on your signature, and the contractor was overpaid. If the AG office now didn't pick it up, the contractor get more money than what he worked for. And we don't know how many projects like that actually happened. This is just a sample. So it is the technical officers who really have to do their work correctly and provide the level of guidance. May I ask the permanent secretary, Comrade Chairman, what verification mechanism are in place? Or before I go that, you said the engineer is a former engineer. Can I ask the engineer if he was dismissed or he left by choice or on what circumstances?
Oh, I left by choice.
You left by choice?
Correct.
Can I ask the permanent secretary what mechanism is in place now to ensure that your technical officers don't misguide you?
Honorable member, we have put systems in place and stern warnings and reminders are given to the engineering department to only recommend payments based on actual measurement of works and not estimations or pictures.
But that has always been there, PS. And I'm sure the former PS, can also endorse that has always been the standard practice across all agencies, that you pay on measured work and you verify the work. The onus is really what I'm trying to establish, Chairman. The onus is really on you, the technical officer, holding to your responsibilities with some degree of honesty, so that when you do it and it is factual and not misleading your heads of department and your permanent secretary and even your ministers of government. So I hope, PS, you take note of what was said here and find a mechanism one way or another to verify that your engineers and other technical officers do what is accurate so that we can account for taxpayers' money properly. Thank you, Chair.
Noted, honorable member. We
Miss-
welcome the advice.
Mr. Chairman, maybe my question could be best addressed by the former permanent secretary of the current permanent secretary. So, desired. But if there is going to be a change in the scope or a variation in what needs to be done on a project, is that supposed to be cleared by the permanent secretary with a full disclosure of price variation upward or downward?
Ms. McCalman, permit her to speak.
Honorable member, that is correct.
Could I ask if this project was cleared by you for the changes?
Not that I can recall.
So when you signed off for payments, you were of the impression that everything is following the contracted agreement and what was stipulated.
Yes, honorable member.
When you learned from the Auditor General that there was an overpayment by way of the management letter, what your inquiries revealed?
The same explanation that the engineer is given.
And what action was taken?
He was given a stern warning.
By way of letter?
I can't recall if it was verbally or by way of letter.
According to the public service rules, warnings are given how?
Verbally or written.
And if it is verbal, it needs to be documented somewhere.
Yes, it would have been in the presence of the PSF.
Yeah, but it has to be entered somewhere that a warning was given on such a date.
Yes, honorable member.
Let me go through another question here, because this is to help us with contract management. The changes of...
That's which paragraph, member?
Same paragraph, 674. You're at a prison, and an engineer is making changes to the quality. 674, I'm at. An engineer is making changes to the quality of a material to be used in a high security prison at Mazaruni. And that was not cleared. Is that a small matter or is it a big matter?
To my mind, it is a big matter, honorable member.
Because that's putting the safety of the state at risk. Because if prisoners are able to get out because they could break an inferior material, you are escapees and you gotta go look for them.
I gotta know how to swim too.
The question I want to put, and this I have ears that I heard, the engineer said that he prepared the scope and he identified who had this material when he said that. Is that normal in the preparation of bills for us to know who got what when we're preparing bills, or we deal with matters of principles?
Honorable member, I'll ask the former engineer to say.
Two things. One is that we couldn't leave the window open that night. it was bad. They had security on it, and they had basically wood that was forming bars. So that is why the on-site decision was made, that it can't be left open. The other thing is, yes, it's normal to verify that the availability of materials before we go about designing, because it doesn't make sense we design something where we can't get it in Guyana and we take 4 or 5 months to bring it. So we use what we can here with the approval of the prison service that, okay, yes, this could work.
My question, I don't think it's properly answered, but maybe I could put it another way. Were these bars that had to be placed, which changed from 6 to 10, put on the same day that the decision was made?
He had on them on site already.
That is where my problem is. That is where my problem is. It was all local arrangements for the contractor already by what he could get. And a decision was made to use that. It wasn't cleared by the permanent secretary. The man was still paid like if it was 6 gauge because he had it on site, forcing the hand of the ministry. Well, the ministry paid. The ministry paid. And this is a very, I don't see it as a small matter.
No, but Chairman, I want to clarify with what Comrade Edghill just said. It was not forcing the hand of the ministry, because what we have established is that the ministry did not even know that this happened. And it comes back to my earlier point. The technical officer has to guide the ministry accordingly. The on-site decision was made by the technical officer.
Yeah, but even
The
before...
bill of quantity, the certificate of completion was signed by the technical officer. The technical officer is the one who's supposed to inform the ministry that this change was made because of this reason and get the ratification from the ministry, and it would have adjusted the payment. So it is the technical officer who misguided the entire ministry.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Mr. Mike Paul, and I think that is already established.
A lot of things has been established.
But I'm making the point that a contractor has a bill that says he needs to provide this material at this particular strength. He carries to the work site a material of a lesser strength. Did he do that on his own volition? Or there was a local agreement, if you're getting this, we take this one?
Engineer, from what I heard you said earlier, probably I didn't hear you clearly, but I thought you said you consulted with the prison authorities.
No, that's at the time of designing.
So either of the two could have worked?
It could have worked. In fact, the same one is still there
The same one that the engineer used?
that the contractor used.
Okay. Member Siraj?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, at 674, 673 had to do with the dorm. At 674, they have renovation for living quarters. And here we have another overpayment that represents 30%, just about 30% of the contract sum. And the accounting officer say, and both two contracts, Mr. Chairman, I noted, the site is the Mazaruni complex there. One is living quarters, one is dorm. Can the accounting officer say whether the contractor for both projects was the same?
PS?
No, honorable member.
Mr. Chairman, can we get an update if at the time of the audit check, the contractor was overpaid 30% of the contract sum, he was also demobilized from the site. And it was recommended that steps be taken to recover the overpayment, which represent 30% of the contract sum, and also to terminate the contract. Can we get an update on whether the recommendations of the audit office were carried out.
Honorable member, the contract with FS Construction was terminated. The ministry has since revisited the project and works were completed to the value of the advance payment $711,836. Hence, there was no overpayment on this project.
The contract was completed by the same contractor?
Paragraph 674 I responded to.
That is correct. I'm on the same paragraph.
Yes, honorable member, it was the same contractor.
You have the evidence to substantiate that?
The engineer will give further clarity.
If I could give a background on this project, what had happened.
Hold on, sir. Do you have the
Sir.
evidence to substantiate it was the same contractor? Is it here?
It was submitted to the Auditor General.
AG, can you confirm that?
Yes, FS completing contract.
Mr. Chair, it's two different contractors. This project at 674 is a different contractor from the one at 673.
PS, I indicated to you earlier, if you're not certain about your information, do not mislead this committee.
Mr. Chairman, it was stated by the PS that the contractors are different contractors from 673 and 674. My question is not related to 673, it's related to 674 in the sense that the original contractor was overpaid by 30% of the contract sum, and it was recommended that efforts be made to recover the overpayment, terminate the contract, and also complete the project, which is renovation of B17 living quarters. So my question was whether the recommendation of the audit office was carried out. The answer was that the contractor FS, that this contract was terminated, the works were completed, and the overpayment was recovered. So if the overpayment was recovered, then the question was whether the contract was completed by another contractor using the overpayment that was recovered.
Go ahead.
Honorable member, permission for the engineer to respond.
Honorable member, the project was never completed once it was terminated for FS. Now, the first question was if the overpayment was recovered. So he was given, according to contractor, 30% for mobilization, the advance. He started works, completed a good percentage, and then basically he disappeared. Several methods were tried to make contact with him, which were not successful. During the time of the physical verification, we were still trying to make contact with the contractor. The bonds were still valid at the time. Subsequently to that, we took the decision to terminate and to recover the advance payment. Upon measuring, the amounts of work that he had done totaled to more than the advance payment, so we were able to close the contract.
Mr. Chair, going back to 673, the engineer told PSC that it is the same material that is still at the windows. But the agency's response to the Auditor General, the contractor is currently replacing the 10G expandable mesh with 6G. Currently, that's in 2018, when this report was published, and has agreed to refund the remaining sum of 596, 640 that was overpaid. Was this current exercise ever completed?
No, it was never completed.
So this was misleading to the Auditor General when we said it was currently being replaced. I'd like the former PS to tell me about the answer to this because she would have had to submit this to the Auditor General. How did we arrive at a response to the Auditor General that says it is currently being replaced? And this morning at PAC, we are told it's the same thing that is still there.
Honorable member, at the time of the meeting, the engineer had said to the Auditor General that he would get the contractor to replace the mesh and put the one that was in the bill. However, he wasn't locating the required mesh, and a decision was made for him to refund the money.
But the word currently, which means the impression the Auditor General would have had, and I will ask the Auditor General to tell me, if when you met, you were saying, look, we are correcting this thing, it's in process, and with the price difference, we will get after changing over from 10 to 6, we'll also get a refund of $596 because the difference in price would have been too much. We'd still have, after the changeover is made, $596 will still have to be refunded. That is what this paragraph is saying. Am I correct, Auditor General?
Mr. Chair, that is correct. At the time when they would have provided a response, this was the response provided by the ministry.
Yes.
Honorable member, could you please repeat the question for the engineer to respond?
Mr. Chairman, I'm seeking to confirm that the then Permanent Secretary provided a response to the Auditor General that suggested that this finding of the use of an inferior material and the payment for it as if it was the original material was being remedied by two ways. One, they were replacing the 10G to the 6G. And the differential in price of $596 million would be refunded. This morning we're being told the changeover never took place. But the language used in the Auditor General report was current. It's currently being done, something enacted.
The contractor was in the process sourcing the metal, the 6G. But subsequently didn't get the amount, so he refunded the remaining.
So how much money was refunded?
So the 869.
And we have the evidence for the refund?
Yes, we do.
We have the receipt?
Yes, honorable member, there's a receipt.
Is it fair to say, engineer, that the PS's response to the audit office was influenced by what you guided her by?
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move on to 675.
Go ahead, member.
This has to do with logbooks. The 6 vehicles that the logbooks were not presented for, could you say who these vehicles were assigned to? Because I know the Auditor General has indicated before the minister, the permanent secretary, those vehicles logbooks are exempt. So who these 6 vehicles were assigned to?
Honorable Member, the Guyana Fire Service.
The Guyana Fire Service. And could you state what are these vehicles and who used them?
Remember, I don't think the PS would be in a position to determine who used it. If it was sent to the fire service, then the fire service can provide
But
that
did the
information.
fire service still answers to the PS? The fire service still answers to the PS? This is a query. The 6 vehicles, were they fire tenders? Were they buses? Were they ambulance? Were they, what were the vehicles?
Honorable Member, I'm being advised that all 6 are for water tenders.
All 6 are for water tenders. Have we since corrected the keeping of logbooks for the water tenders?
Honorable Member, we have thus far attempted to put a system in place by
Attempted to, why are you still attempting?
My apologies, Member. By weekly verification by the operations or admin staff of the agency.
But in keeping with the store's regulations, one of the reasons why logbooks are required is to ensure we avoid abuse and we have strict compliance for proper use. In the absence of logbooks, anything could happen. So I agree with the chairman when he says not trying to. We have to ensure that we have that in place.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Was the staff complementing the stores?
At the Guyana Fire Service or overall?
Yeah, overall.
I won't be able to say. I will ask the lady.
How much are the fire service?
Pardon me?
How many are the fire service?
I won't have that figure on hand, sir, but I could submit it at a later date. No, we did not bring the ring. A date to submit, sir?
1 week.
The chair, just a quick follow-up question for the PS.
Go ahead, member.
For my clarity, if permitted.
Go ahead, sir.
PS, just for record, these water tenders, you said they're water tenders that were logbook. Can you tell us exactly what these water tenders are used for, why, and how they're deployed? The ones without the logbooks?
Honorable Member, the water tenders are what are used to go and out their fires.
And just for the records, because I don't want to be misled. So a emergency call comes in.
They are dispatched, yes, they are dispatched
Immediately.
upon the request of, yes, calls to
And-
fire
and-
service.
And it is a standard operating procedure that you're dispatched immediately to the location and to, because obviously it's for fire. That is standard operating procedure.
I have no rep here from the fire service, but I'd like to believe that that is the standard operating procedures of the agency. Immediate
Thank you.
action.
Mr. Chair,
Proceed.
I would like to go to 2018. And I'm at paragraph 783 of 2018. For the year under review, it was observed that vehicle insurances for 14 officers who received traveling allowance to the period January to December 2018 were not presented for audit examination. In addition, there were 5 instances where vehicle insurances were only submitted for a part of the year. At the time of reporting in September 2019, vehicle insurances for 2 out of the 14 outstanding insurances were received, while for partial submissions, 4 were received. Could the accounting officer tell PSC, just for the purpose of clarification, why is it important for insurances as well as other documentation be provided before payments are made?
Go ahead, PS.
To ensure that the duty-free vehicle has actually came into use by the said officer, and to ensure that the payment is in accordance with the registrations, etc.
So we have to establish that the officer that's receiving the payment, the vehicle is his vehicle, and it is in proper order. He's not collecting money that he's not entitled to.
Correct, Honorable Member, based on the duty-free entitlement.
Yes. So, in the instance of payment without the documentation, how did this happen?
Honorable Member, permission for the Principal Assistant Secretary Finance.
We ask the chair for permission, not the honorable member.
Honorable.
Go ahead, member.
Honorable Member, the updated insurance at the time was available, but it was not filed in this person's file.
But even at the time of reporting, which would have come after management letters were served, there was an update that did not show full compliance.
At the time, sir, we were trying to locate some of those copies from the personal files.
But if we're trying to locate copies, how are we making payments? Against what? Payments had to be made after you would have seen documentation. And once documentation is seen, it is placed in a particular place that is called a file. So how were the payments made in the first place when we had to be looking for the documents?
Sir, generally payments are made when these copies of insurance are submitted. They were seen, but at the time of the verification by state audit, we had some difficulties locating those copies.
But if a submission is made, a copy have to be made. Somebody have to sign and it's seen on such a date and put in a file.
It was filed, but it was not in a personal file.
Where it was filed?
It was filed in a separate file, Honorable Member. Not in the person's
I know we got problems with the procurement and engineering department short of staff. We had problems with filing too.
Comrade Chip, member, the auditor look at the person's personal file. As I said, they were available, but they were not placed in the person's personal file.
But would you agree that as the accounting officer, if a query is raised that makes your agency that you're the accounting officer for, it is in your best interest to find all the documents before the report is written and submitted to the Auditor General?
Yes,
I agree with.
Yes, Honorable Member.
But was that done?
Yes, Honorable Member, the copies were found and submitted to state audit.
But at the time of reporting, September 2019, vehicle insurances for 2 out of the 14 outstanding insurances were received. 2 out of 14.
Where were those files found that caused you to submit it late to the state auditors? Because they weren't in the personal files. Where were they? Because they eventually were submitted. Where did you find those files from?
They were filed at the Guyana Fire Service in a folder at the Guyana Fire Service.
That file had a particular name or something?
I cannot recall, Comrade Chair, at this moment, but we did locate those documents.
So is there a system in place, PS, to ensure that this doesn't reoccur? Where files are actually stored where they're supposed to be stored?
Yes, Honorable Chair, we have put systems in place to maintain the register and also for persons to submit timely the updated insurances. failure to comply will allow them to be withheld from their allowance.
Member Maipol,
Thank you, Comrade Chairman. Comrade Chairman, I turn to para 784 of the 2018 report. And before I go down to this paragraph, I just want to verify some information. The engineer that worked in 2018 is the engineer that is seated next to you, PS?
Correct, honorable member.
Is this the only person that was in that department, or were there others?
At the time, there were two engineers. He focused mostly on the engineer of the projects, and there was another that shared duties in the procurement department.
He focused on what, please?
The projects.
The projects. So for maintenance works, para 784, amongst totaling 151.300 million were allocated for repairs and maintenance works within the ministry. According to the appropriation accounts as at 31st of December 2018, amongst totaling 113.464 million were expended as shown in the table below. Maintenance of buildings, the total expended was 70,111,000 from an allotted sum of 90,200,000. And maintenance of other infrastructure, the sum expended was 43,353,000 from a sum of 61,100,000. 785. A sample of 9 projects with contract sums totaling 38.581 million for maintenance works were selected for physical verification. So from this sum of 113,464,000, the auditor office examined a total of 38.581 million. It was noted that the contract for the renovation of new self-acting sluice at Western Section Losignan was awarded in the sum of 4.636 million by Ministerial Tender Board to the lowest evaluated of 16 bidders. The engineer's estimate was 5.780 million. May I ask if this is the engineer that oversaw this project?
Correct, honorable member, Mr. Dan.
Correct. The contract was signed on the 5th of December 2018 with duration of 2 months for completion and defects liability period of 3 months. As at December 2018, amounts totaling 4.544 million was paid to the contractor. However, the following observations were noted. A, it was discovered that the engineer certified that the works were completed since 16 of December 2018. However, our physical verification on the 3rd of May 2019 revealed that the contractor was still on site, effecting works to the structure. As such, the engineer falsely certified that the works were completed since December 2018. B, physical inspection of the concrete works to the structure revealed shabby works with honeycombing of the concrete and pieces of cement bags cast into the finishing structure. The ministry responded to this and said that the head of the budget agency indicated that the contractor was paid after the completion of the project, and B, all remedial works have been completed on the project. My question to the engineer, did you falsely certify that the works were completed since December of 2018?
No, not correct.
So can you provide us with an explanation to this paragraph?
As it was noted in section B, that indeed there were some shoddy works, and at the time of the physical verification, he was completing doing remedial works to the damaged section. So what had happened, we held the payments until these remedial works were completed.
Can I ask the Auditor General to substantiate this statement, Comrade Chairman, this line, specifically A? It was discovered that the engineer certified that works were completed since the 16th of December, 2018. However, on physical verification on the 3rd of May 2019, revealed that the contractor was still on site, effecting works to the structure.
AG? Yes, AG.
Through the chair. We conduct a visit on the 3rd of May 2019. When we visit there, the contractor was still on site working. He was doing work to the surface. This is the road works. So when the entity actually paid in December, the works couldn't have been completed.
Are you saying that the entity paid in 2018 of December the full amount for this project?
Through the chair, the works are certified in December.
But not paid?
In a sense, they cut and hold the check.
In the sense what? So before the entity could have cut this check, there would have had to be certification of completion.
Through the chair, yes.
Can the PS provide to us if there was a certificate of completion for this project before the check was cut in 2018 of December?
Not a certificate of completion, but a payment certificate and being advised.
But the full sum was cut. And if the full sum was cut, it means that there had to be a certificate of completion.
The reason being, there was no certificate of completion. One, the contractor was not issued payment. Two, he was still to correct the remedial works.
But how can the accounts department proceed to process full payment sum?
Can we ask the Accountant General to lend some support here and guidance? Could that be done, AG?
Exactly.
Based on that inference, we all know what happens at the end of the year, where transactions are posted by the 31st of December, but the checks are held until the work is completed.
Yeah. Thank you, AG.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
What's the paragraph, sir?
same paragraph, same major 5. If the Auditor General says in its report that the engineer certified the works, question to the Auditor General, what documentation did you see certifying the works?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, we would have used the final payment voucher, and we have it with us here, where I'm reading this document that is dated the 17th of December 2018. It has the name of the contract, renovation of new self-acting sluice, contract sum 4.5, final payment, value of work done, measured work in bracket 4.5, sum now to be paid. Then it also goes on to say, I hereby certify that I inspected the works on 17th of December 2018 and that the workmanship is in accordance with the schedule of works. The sum of 1.5 is now due. So this is the final payment. And this document is signed by the engineer at the time.
What's the name of the engineer?
As well as the contractor.
Could you state the name of the engineer?
The engineer would have been Mr. Danny Ramdolar.
Is that you, sir?
Correct.
So how is it that your information that you're providing to PSCs is vastly different from the audit office?
That's December. They had visited in May, where the guy was doing the remedial works and putting them on
No,
the top
we're
layer.
talking about the payment, sir. What the payment of the audit office is saying.
That's a payment certificate and not a final completion certificate.
Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General just read the
Could the
document.
audit office reread to the engineer who probably
The matter
wasn't
for the
paying
police.
attention what you just provided this PSC?
Mr. Chair, for clarity, we are using the final payment voucher presented to us for this contract, where it's indicating that the full amount is certified for payment. One of the pages attached to this voucher is dated the 17th of December 2018. It bears the name of the contract, renovation of new self-acting sluice at Eastern Section. It has details of the ministry, the contractor. It goes on to say the contract sum was 4,547,461. Then final payment just below that. Value of work done, in bracket measured works, 4,547,461, which is the contract sum. Below that, it is stated, I hereby certify that I inspected the works on 17th of December 2018 and that the workmanship is in accordance with the schedule of works. And it has a sum of 1.5 is now due, and it's signed by the engineer, Danny Ramdalar, along with the contractor. I want to also add, Mr. Chair, that at the time when we visited the project in May, while remedial works were to be effected on the structure, the contractor was also doing some road works, which was part of the contract also. So the works could not have been completed. It wasn't remedial works alone he was doing to the structure. He was carrying out the normal works on the road as was supposed to be in the contract.
So the 1.5 was that the final payment?
Can we have the engineer respond to the audit office statement?
It must be noted that payments were not issued until everything was completed, and this was after May.
Mr. Chairman, the issue of payments being issued is a,
Minuscule.
you've exposed yourself by saying that. Because if 2 weeks after you sign a contract, you prepare a final payment voucher that went to the ministry, a finance department for payment, it's a payment voucher that they're auditing, signed by both you and the contractor. When the work was not completed, it was not done, we're in breach. Serious breach. Could I get the assistance of the former permanent secretary if she was aware of this transaction and what was the advice that was given to facilitate this payment?
Honorable member, at the time, because it's the end of the year, in order to retrieve the money from the system, that's the procedure that was used.
Madam, Mr. Chairman, we have a public officer who's telling PAC that to facilitate monies being recorded as expended for a year, documents are written up to falsify activities that did not take place? That's what you're telling the PAC this morning?
Honorable member, it was done not knowing that the contractor would have encountered these difficulties with the project.
So this was a transaction that you approved?
At the time.
Huh?
At the time, honorable member.
Member.
Mr. Chair, could the Accountant General give the right procedures, what's supposed to be followed?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In reviewing this paragraph, the contract was signed on the 5th of December 2018. I would recommend that the PS should have only processed maybe the mobilization for this payment, and then it should have been rebudgeted in 2019 in order for the project to be completed in the following year as a rollover project.
What was the projected time
It
span.
says 2 months.
So it was
So
rolling
it would have
over.
had to be a rollover project.
And then it had a retention period of 3
Yeah, it
months.
Yes.
So Chair, I want to
maintenance.
ask, from the sum that was paid that the Auditor General's office provided us, that sum, they did not withhold the retention sum.
Mr. Chairman, just
Just
before we
further-
misguided in the conversation,
Okay,
this is a
ju-
maintenance project
just a-
and
yes.
not a capital project.
That's what I was about to say. Sorry about that. It's a-
Capital
it's a
projects got
maintenance.
different
Yeah, yeah.
dimensions.
Maintenance.
Yes. So the retention sum was also
Included.
included
Yes,
there, right?
that's correct. Because it's a 3-month liability period. of 3
Yes.
months.
The former PS, may I ask how long you served as PS at the ministry, and were you an accounting officer before the ministry?
No, I was not an accounting officer before, and I started in 2015.
In
2015.
Okay, and when you started, there had to be what I'm trying to establish, if, and you can help me, if this was a procedure that happened, that you inherited and continued, and now you are familiar that it is not the right procedure, or is it something that you started off your own?
No, honorable member.
Because you had to be guided in 2015 when you came.
Yes, it was a practice.
So the ministry had a system in place where they would normally cut these checks to show that they have spent the money in the year, and when the project is completed, then they pay.
Yes, honorable member.
Can I ask the engineer, the former engineer, when is it that he started at the ministry?
January 2014.
January of 2014. Can you substantiate if this is the practice that has always been in place?
No, it wasn't a regular practice.
So when it started?
I cannot say exactly when.
So this never happened in 2014, that's what you're saying? Because the PS is saying she inherited advice and guidance, and that is why it went down that road. And it is something that is being brought to our attention now that should not have happened.
It's something that I do not know the answer to because I wasn't the senior person.
Oh, you were not the senior at the time?
Yeah, so I didn't know what happened or what were happening.
When you became the senior?
2015.
And when you became the senior in 2015, is this how you did it? In terms of preparing these documents with the expectation of holding the check and pay upon completion?
This is not a regular practice. This, if I can remember clearly, probably this is a one-off because of the pressures of 3112.
Because of what?
The end of the year with current projects. 3112.
You know, I can go back into the previous AG reports, right?
So it's not something. It's not something that is regularly done. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, but it's not something that is regularly done.
Yes, is this happening under your watch as the PS?
No, honorable member. We only issue payments based on the measurements they would have certified.
So don't cut checks and hold it.
No, but what PS said,
Hold on,
Chairman.
sir. PS?
No, honorable member.
At the in the month of December, you don't cut checks and hold it before the contract concludes and then pay. Do you do that?
I'm aware of the regulations, honorable member.
No, the question is, do you do it?
No, honorable member.
No. Okay.
Chairman,
Go ahead,
PS
sir.
said that she cuts check based on certified works. Am I correct, PS? Based on receiving the guidance that the work is certified.
From the technical staff, honorable member.
From the technical staff. But that's exactly what happened here.
Yes.
Is the technical staff advised that the work is certified based on what was read by the Auditor General's office? That the technical officer said the work certified, pay the man. And that is what the PS did. So, and the measure that is currently in place It's the same thing.
That's what I'm
the
saying.
technical officer advises the PS, and the PS executes based on the advice from the technical officer. So sorry, it comes back to what I was saying. The technical officer has to execute his or her function with honesty.
Mr. Chairman, I would.
Mr. Chair, before
Go ahead,
Minister
AG.
Edgeo, I just want to clarify with what I said before with the rollover. It should have been a multi-year project
Yes.
and not a rollover. Thanks.
Chair, if I may,
Go ahead, FS.
the correction is I was about to come in and say that multi-year should have been requested for this, but given the fact that it's extended beyond the current fiscal year, and after that approval, you have more problems. That is my question here.
Thank you, FS.
Mr. Chairman, just two things quickly. One, I'm happy that we are, perhaps there is an adjustment at PSC for today, that we are asking about current matters, which was not allowed before. I have no objections to it. Secondly, I want to indicate that the rules are the rules. And if someone breaks the rules, taking a chance, and they are caught, you can't make somebody else did it and tell me it could be done as your excuse. So whether a previous permanent secretary or some other officer cut a check and kept it with the pretense of a project being complete and it wasn't, that doesn't change the rules. The rules are unexpended sums must be returned to the consolidated fund, and there is nothing stopping you in your budget for the next year to ask for the sums to be allocated as a multi-year project, as explained by the FS. But what is difficult here for me to understand is that 2 weeks after the signing of a contract, we prepared everything in full. So I want to walk this through. When was the first payment made? Date. Let me ask my question. No, we're working as a team, we're working as a committee.
The date of Western Sluice. For the contract.
Honorable member, we would ask for time till late over. We did not work with the first payment. Only
payment for made in
Two. Yeah, I think two. I can't remember later over.
We cannot recall how many except for the final payment, but we will late over with a date decided upon.
1 week PS.
So,
Notice.
you want to know the date? The first payment was made. The date of the second payment was made. And if there were any other payments after the second, the date for the final payment.
And the amounts.
Noted, Chair.
But just for chance.
Oh, you have it?
Chairman,
Oh, sorry.
if
Hold
the
on,
Auditor
hold on,
General have
hold
it,
on,
I'll be happy.
remember. The audit office has those information. Can you provide the PSC with those information? Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, we don't have all the payments, we just have the final one with us, but we'll of course cross-check with the ministries. So.
No, they were the final payment.
You have any idea how many payments were made? What was the final payment?
Mr. Chair, the final payment was for 1,520,580. 520,580.
And the date?
580. And this was
17th of December.
the check date is the 29th of December 2018. With the other payments, I wouldn't want to guess, so just please give
We
us
don't
the time
want you to
confirm.
guess either. So the PS has a week to provide us with that information. Thank
You will need to determine when it was paid to the contractor.
Yes, all of
Right.
that the PS will provide.
Now,
Yes, when you're providing the information, kindly make 25 copies and send it via email to the clerk as well. Right?
Noted, Chair.
Go ahead, member Etche.
so we're still at 785B. Could the engineer, with the permission of the PS, of course, Chairman, explain to PSC what causes honeycombing of concrete?
Improper formwork. Improper formwork.
Improper,
Formwork. In other words, if you get leakage on the formwork, that's one. If it's not properly vibrated,
Improper what? Did they hear that?
formwork.
The farm board?
Yeah. If there's escape of water or improper vibration,
what role rusted steel plays in that as well?
no, I don't understand the question. What role?
If the steel has rust in it when you cast it, what happens to the concrete?
Oh, it could lead the concrete to crack, but it could lead the concrete to crack.
And with the case of the cement bags being casted into the concrete, what that would have meant that the contractor used cement bags to patch up the leakage while the casting?
Exactly, yes.
So before a contractor casts concrete, isn't it usual engineering practice that he has to get it okay from the engineer or the clerk of works to ensure that everything is in order before casting is done?
Let's backpedal for a couple. It must be noted that at this time we had in excess of 60 projects with basically one single engineer.
No, sir. That's not a question. Answer the member's question.
Yes, it's customary, but in this case, we couldn't visit.
Why you couldn't visit? Because of
it
the
was-
6 projects?
It was 60.
Was that?
In excess of 60
60 projects?
Yes. No, this was at the end of the year too.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, 1 second. PS, are there sufficient systems in place to prevent this from happening where the staff cannot go and visit these respective projects that has to be completed for payments to be put? Do you have any system in place to prevent this from happening?
Honorable member, as mentioned earlier, we have put systems in place to expand our engineering unit by having more staff hired and bonded scholars from PSM, and we will look into getting more as our extension completes to house them.
How many staff you are of the view needs to be employed to fix this broken system?
I would say a component of 1 dozen, including clerk of works, engineers, etc.
12 more staff is needed.
A component of total 12. Currently, we have 7.
So you need 5 more staff.
Yes, Honorable Chair.
And you're putting systems in place to make those staff available?
We have already commenced those systems.
Was that?
We have already started to employ.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we are talking here about maintenance contracts. A couple of things. One, forgive my ignorance, but maybe the PS or the former PS could help. Did the Ministry of Public Security have a supplementary that provided for these projects, or this was just the regular budgeting cycle for the year?
Honorable member, it was the regular budget cycle.
Good. Does the ministry have a list of pre-qualified contractors?
Honorable member.
So why was this contract only awarded in December? And it was not an emergency because this is regular maintenance. That would have been identified the year before to be included in the budget cycle.
Honorable member, if I can recall, the engineer could help me out here. I think this was savings from the sum that was allocated in 2018, and this was an additional project that we got approval for.
So you did all that you were supposed to do, you had some money, and now you're executing this one.
If the engineer can, if I can recall. Danny?
I cannot recall very clearly about it, but I don't want to speculate.
Is this the only contract that was awarded in December?
I cannot say with any accuracy.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
I heard the engineer saying just now that what prevented him from visiting was because there were 60 projects that were being managed at the time. Am I accurate?
I'm not exact with the word. I just call a figure more or less that we have yearly.
Was that, sir?
No, man.
You just call a figure?
Usually we have, this is the amount of project. I cannot recall clearly if that was the exact amount in
Engineer, you are before the Public Accounts Committee. You give accurate information because based on the information that you just give, the member is formulating his questions. So I'm reminding you, sir, where you are. And it is required that you give evidence that are factual and truthful. Do not mislead this committee, sir. If you're not certain, don't respond as if you are certain. Okay?
Noted.
You have the floor, member Maipo.
Thank you, sir. Sir, so the point the engineer tried to make to us is that because there were a lot of projects to manage during that December period, that caused him to not visit. I do recall that we established earlier that there were 2 engineers at the time in the department. Am I correct?
Correct.
And there were other support staff, clerk of work, superintendent of work, or just the 2 engineers?
There were 2 clerk of work, but let me just explain. At that time, the procurement was being done for supplies was being done by the engineering department. So one engineer basically was a procurement staff, and this includes all the printing of these documents and going to tender board and back and forth and these things within that department that basically had 4 staff.
Yeah, but when the project's done award, what the engineer does after? The engineer got to resume his duties as an engineer.
If we place this into context, to travel to Mazaruni in one day.
Now, well, let's place this into context. This project had a duration of 2 months. 2 months, duration of 2 months for completion and defects liability period of 3 months. The answer that you're providing to us, sir, is giving us the impression as though this project had to be completed in December. Hence, you could not have visited it in December. So, was there a visit in January? Was there a visit in February? Because it had a 2 months duration. The contract was signed on the 5th of December 2018. Is that the date when this project started?
I cannot give you the exact date it started. I recall that it started very shortly after.
You could recall it started very shortly after. That could be the 10th of December too. That could very well be the 15th of December. It's shortly because everything was happening in that month and it really made the days feel as though they were short. So even if it was the 20th of December, it was shortly because of the activities that you created in our head to say that this month was a hectic month. The point I am making is that it had a 2 months duration. And if we are talking about casting and using the farm board not properly and tying of steel rod, it's a maintenance project, so probably they had to remove a structure before they could put back a structure in terms of renovating, take out a part and what's not. The point I'm making, sir, is that December month is not the only month that visits could have been done here. And even if it's early in January, you could have guided the engineer, the contractor, to do what is right. And if you saw him doing the wrong thing, then you tell him to dismantle and go again. At his expense because he's doing the wrong thing. He had to be guided by you, sir, and your department. So I believe, Comrade Chairman, that the answers are academic answers to these questions and does not reveal what is the truth in this matter. I just wanted to make that known.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
Same paragraph. Could the permanent secretary or the engineer tell us if you have this check cut because you wanted to get your expenditure up and you have a project ongoing, could they tell us when they inspected this work in 2019, and if they could tell us when they disbursed the money in 2019? The Auditor General visited in May. Work was ongoing. The road was still being done. Remedial work was being done. When you visited and when the check was handed over?
Honorable member, the former engineer will respond.
This was May 2018. 2019, sorry.
You visited in May 2019?
The remedial works would have been completed shortly after the visit.
The Auditor General visited in May?
3rd May, yes.
And when the Auditor General went, that's when you realized that the work ain't finished?
No, he was still doing the remedial work, so a few days after. No, we have to remember this is remedial works in this area.
Chairman, you had a contract. Your ministry provided a contract that you are aware of for a project to last 2 months, which would have ended it by, what, the 5th of February? Because it was signed on the 5th of December. So 5th of December to 5th of January to 5th of February. That's the 3 months period.
Don't count like that. It got to be the 4th.
All right, the 4th. The 4th of February. The 3 months liability gonna kick in now, right? So it's gonna be what? March, April, and May. So in the defects liability period, work is still going on to the project. Were there changes made to facilitate the work that is ongoing? Because if you still got work going on in May, then you got to move up the liability period and got to move farther down. Correct?
Correct.
And were changes made to that, were advice, you have to give that advice. As the technical officer, you have to provide that advice to your accounting officer to say that, well, accounting officer, because of whatever reason, inclement weather, shortage of cement, not having the right steel rod, whatever, has caused a delay with the completion of this project. And because of this delay, the defects liability period as stated in contract will not be able to be honored. And we have to make some adjustments because we have to protect ourselves as a ministry should anything go wrong. Because if this is May month work going on at this project, If in June something went wrong, how is it that this ministry would have been able to hold the contractor responsible if the contract had a 3 months liability that ended in May? What legal justification the ministry could have gone down to hold the contractor accountable?
Let me clarify. We're talking about the remedial works being done at that point. In other words, the contract would have been completed quite a while before. And these are things that he was fixing. And there was another part that he had to change a door, which he had done it correctly in the first instance, but he had choose to do a different door.
But the audit office just told us that the work he was doing in May was aligned to this contract. Did I hear incorrectly? The work that was being done in May were works relating to this particular contract.
Through the chair, yes.
Yes. So what is it that the audit office is telling us one thing and the former engineer is telling us something else?
No,
Put it into context for us,
no,
please.
he was stopped. So the part where they explained road was actually refilling. It was a culvert.
Is it
So
a part
refilling-
of this contract?
It was filled before with the vehicle.
No, engineer, through the chair. Was the work that was going on in May a part of this contract that was signed on the 5th of December 2018?
I'm not getting you clear. Let me explain.
All right, hold on. December 5th, 2018, a contract was signed. You understand that?
Correct.
December 5th, 2018, a contract was signed. The work that the contractor was doing in May, were those works that were catered for in the contract that was signed on the 5th of December 2018? Yes or no?
He was topping up the soil that with the vehicles driving on it, it went down. So he topped it up back and he was looking at the honeycomb.
So he was doing work that is related to the contract that was signed on the 5th of December
Well,
2018.
it can be considered remedial as well. Because he
in
was,
terms of the defects liability period, he's trying to satisfy it.
Exactly, because payments were held.
And I need some guidance from the AG's office, Comrade Chairman, as to what is the difference that the engineer is trying to create to us to say that the work was completed long before, but yet you are telling us that the work that was being done is work related to the contract. And the persons who are answering us from the AG are engineers themselves.
Yeah. Through the chair.
Go ahead, sir.
The engineer is explaining that it could have been remedial works they were doing. When we would have visited and done our measurements, the overpayment we would have picked up was on white sands and clear low mix. 10.7 cubic meters were paid for. We didn't find any. And there was some forest grade crusher unpaid for that we have a 0 also. And then there was some additional works with a self-acting gate that would not have been in place when we visited.
And this is on the 3rd of May.
Correct. That's the date we would have visited the project.
So on the 3rd of May, you found things there that are paid for that were not catered for.
That were under the contract.
That were under the contract.
But it was not physically in place.
Oh, but it was not physically there.
It was not physically
so it was
there.
paid for but not delivered.
Correct. Yeah, that is accurate.
So how is that remedial work?
Well, exactly. To get into the remedial work, remember when at practical completion or you deem a project completed, if you're going to do remedial work, at that point when you would have deemed the contract completed, you would have what is known as a punch list or a list of defects attached to that defects liability certificate. On that list, you might have remedial works there, which might say completion of crusher run to surface or whatever remedial works within the defects period are to be done is there on that punch.
So remedial work is really additional work.
Not additional works. Remedial would be defects arising from time to time during the defects period, or minor finishes that.
Okay, so you fix during the defects
Right,
liability
but
period.
minor things that you can hand over the project, you can hand over the infrastructure, and it can be used. But these finishing touches can be applied during that period.
During that period. So,
Correct.
so do you consider the work that you saw on the 3rd of May as remedial work?
Definitely, it could not have been remedial works. There were actually bill items that were not in place at the time. Entire items, not part of an item or part of the works. They were totally not there.
So, Chairman, how does the engineer respond to that? The AG office is telling us that these works that were going on in May were works that could not be considered remedial because it wasn't even part of completing what had to be completed. There were actually nothing there to show what was being paid, what was paid for. What was already paid for, apparently.
I differed in my view. I would like the list of items that were paid for and not on site.
Chairman, I think the AG office wants to reply to that.
Mr. Chair, we would have had more photos also for our records. But the items that were paid for, the first is from the preliminaries 1.5. It was the cost for a mobilization advance guarantee. That was 30,000. And on the bill 2, earthworks, it was for the supply, place, and compact 150 mm thick sand loam mix, 60/40 over white sand layer. That was 42,800 for 10.7 cubic meters. And also supply compact 75 mm thick forest grade crusher run over the sand loam layer. And that was $73,200 total. And payment was also made for additional works, which is the fabrication and installation of a metallic self-acting culvert door as indicated. And in our engineer's report here that we have as our records, I'm looking at the structure here. There is the slot for the door to be installed, but the door is plainly not there. So I can tell you offhand that that one in particular wasn't there. In terms of this sand loam, and I don't know the angle, I can't tell you. Maybe we have it in other pictures where the sand loam and the crusher one was to be placed. But
Chairman, I have two simple questions to close my questioning on this paragraph. May I ask the engineer, when is it that he left the ministry?
That would be June 2021.
June of 2021.
Correct.
This paragraph came back to you before the 30th of September 2019. So if you differ from what the audit office is saying, you had ample time to clarify it with the audit office before it could have reached here. So your position about requesting all of this, I'm sure it was provided to you by the audit office before it found its way into this Auditor General's report. Do you agree with that? Because you were at the ministry when all of this happened.
Let me clarify that. We sat together and we cleared this overpayment, and this has been cleared.
Yeah, no, I understand you cleared the overpayment. But the point, the issue...
Could help. When he said we sat together, could you tell us who was the we?
Work and Structures Department and myself from the audit office.
Chair, I rest my case.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Chairman, post facto, the work was done. That's what the Auditor General is saying, that's what the engineer is saying. But what the Auditor General is highlighting, and I would like the FS to, who has the financial secretary, that is, who has the authority under the FMAA to act in these matters, to advise us on the way forward. Because if you have prepared certificates, cut checks of payment, the door is not in place, road works were now being executed. When the audit office checked the quantities for sand, loom, and crusher run, 0, and you're going to tell PAC the work that was being done was remedial work. That's misleading PAC. I don't want to have to sit today to express how I feel, but I feel very badly about this. Because at minimum, we were hearing genuine errors. Genuine errors. Overwork because of limited staff. Now this one is not overwork and limited staff. This is preparing payments for work not even done and certifying it. And then giving an explanation to PAC to justify it by saying the works that the Auditor General saw was remedial work. When they have said in some of the items on the bill that should have been there when they checked zero. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like the FS to guide me on the way forward on this. And we guide PAC. We have a FMAA, it's law in Guyana. The Auditor General don't make these findings just because he has nothing to do. He's saying that the law is not being kept. What's the way forward on this?
Chair, if I may,
Go ahead,
based
sir.
on what I've been seeing in the audit report, for some 785 it appeared that the engineer falsified the certificate. And in my opinion, that is criminal, unless the language used by the AG could be interpreted to mean something different from my interpretation. The AG is saying that the engineer falsely certified the works. So, this particular instance, their justification for charging the engineer. That is my view.
Thank you, FS. This is rather disturbing news to say the least, because I'm convinced that the engineer has indeed misled the PAC with his response, and it was backed up by the findings of the Auditor General's office. And we cannot, as a Public Accounts Committee, accept no accounting officer, present or former, coming before the committee and deliberately misleading this committee. We will not accept such. Accounting officers have a duty to account for the people's resources, past and present. That is why the committee calls past accounting officers as well to give account for their stewardship. And even though you are not the accounting officer, you're a part of the accounting officer's team. So essentially, you two are culpable of being responsible in the mishap of what was expected for you to do. And more so, you came before this committee, even though I would have read out the Legislative Evidence Bodies Act, which indicate anyone who gives false information to the Public Accounts Committee will be guilty of perjury. And I believe you have purged yourself in making deliberately providing false information to the Public Accounts Committee, even though you are so guided, and you still try to defend it by covering it with an additional lie, even though the audit office would have supported what they would have said. This is totally unacceptable, and this committee will not stand for that. What is your response, sir?
I still stand by my response. I think we have some photographs too that we could.
You think what?
Provide. Some photographs that we
I would have seen the photographs provided by the Auditor General's office, which confirms their findings, and yet still you're saying to this committee, you stand by what you're saying?
I still stand by my word.
If the officer stands by his words, as a member of the PSC, I'm making a request that this committee adopt a process that the FS refers this matter for criminal investigation.
Mr. Chairman, if I may be permitted, on the basis of the officer maintaining that he stands by his word, and given that we are witnessing difference in terms of information coming from him and from the audit office, I would like to second the request put forth by Comrade Bishop for this matter to be referred to the Finance Secretary and a criminal investigation be met out.
That is the position of the Public Accounts Committee, and I hope that this is a guide for future accounting officers who will make an appearance before the Public Accounts Committee. This is a serious committee of the Parliament of Guyana, and all accounting officers have a duty to be truthful in their responses to this committee, because we all our work and our responsibility to this nation very serious, and we expect accounting officers coming before us to do the same and accord us the respect and also the respect of this Parliament subcommittee. So that is the decision of the committee, and FS, you're so guided. I will ask this officer to recuse himself from the continuation of this examination.
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, I know the action that we're taking is an unprecedented one. But is there anything that this officer wants to say to PSC before he recuse himself?
We have looked at it. I had my officers looked at it as well, and that was what I got. I looked at the photos too, and this is what.
So you maintain your position?
Things were on site. There's another one that was mentioned that the door wasn't on site. The door was on site too.
I have seen that same pictures where you're saying that the door was on site, and the audit office pictures doesn't reflect any door. And that could be shown to you on your way out. Because we cannot have officers coming to this committee and misleading this committee. If that is your final remark, I'll ask you to recuse yourself from the continuation of the examination of this agency. The remaining paragraphs are put to all members.
Mr. Chairman, 687 of 2017.
What is the number?
687.
Go ahead.
The sum of 174 million was expended on the purchase of a fireboat, water tenders, and ambulances to the Guyana Fire Service. Including the sum is a contract which was awarded by the National Procurement and Administration Board via sole sourcing in the sum of 307,457,000 for the procurement of one multi-purpose fire rescue boat for the Guyana Fire Service. The contract was signed on the 4th of August 2017. And according to the contract, the boat was to be delivered 9 to 10 months after the signing of the contract. As of December 31st, 2017, the amount of 131.354 million was paid to the contractor. They had approval for a multi-year contract, and the final payment was budgeted for in 2018. However, at the time of reporting, the boat was not received, although 10 months had elapsed. Nevertheless, it was noted that the supplier indicated that the boat would be shipped on the 5th of November, 2018. Now, a couple of questions. If a contract is sole source, it means that this was the company that specializes in this kind of equipment that could not have been had anywhere else because justification had to be made for sole sourcing. Am I correct?
Correct, honorable member.
Huh?
Correct, honorable member.
What led to the delay in the shipping of the boat? Can't be COVID, this is 2017.
Honorable member, I am advised that the Angloco, the British company that they would have single sourced back then to source this fireboat, could not find a suitable vessel to ship it on.
So getting it to Guyana was the problem.
I am advised by the staff that is what was the problem.
That was given in writing?
Yes, honorable member, we have a document from the Angloco company dated 26th June 2019.
And what indicated?
It comes with Guyana Fire's new fireboat for Guyana Fire Service. It comes with great disappointment to tell you that the fireboat will be delayed by 2 weeks. This is due to the ferry, which is not suitable to take the fireboat. So we have to book it on the next suitable ferry, which is due in the UK on the 17th of July 2019, which will make the delivery to Guyana on the December 8, 2019.
December?
August 8, sorry.
August
12th
8.
to August 2019.
So, having received that letter, the Auditor General is now telling us the actual boat was shipped on the 5th of November 2018. Angloco did not fulfill their contractual obligation. The contract terms was for how long?
I'm advised 10 months.
10 months. When did this actual boat arrive in Guyana?
Honorable member, we don't have the exact date, but it was arrived later in the year of 2019, as was verified by state audit.
2019?
Late in the year as verified by state audit.
Late 2019?
But we don't have the exact date, honorable member.
So this boat came 2 years after almost.
One year after, honorable member.
No, it came 2 years after the signing of the contract.
On the signing of the contract.
1 year later than the contractual period.
Yes, honorable member.
Did the contract make provision for liquidated damages?
I'm advised at the time, no, honorable member.
Why it didn't make provision for liquidated damages?
I will allow the former permanent secretary to respond.
Honorable member, the contract did not make provision for liquidated damages. Angloco is a company that the Guyana Fire Service procure all the equipment from, and we never had problems with this company. But due to the locating the right vessel to bring the the boat to Guyana, there is where they had the difficulty.
When was the final payment made on this boat?
Honorable Member, I am advised 2018.
It was, so we had a sum, we paid 131 first.
47%.
Huh?
47%.
47%
Was the first payment on October 4th.
on October 4th. And it was a multi-year project that was budgeted for in 2018.
Yes, Honorable Member.
The monies that were budgeted in 2018, all was paid.
The final payment, 53%, was paid in August of 2018.
In August of 2018. And we received the boat 1 year after,
Yes, Honorable Member.
late 2019.
Yes, Honorable Member.
So we gave to Angloco a loan without interest.
Honorable Member, the boat was completed. The actual ship was, the boat was
The actual boat was completed. Did we have verification the actual boat was completed?
Yes, they did indicate in the letter that the fire boat will be delayed 2 weeks because of the shipment ferry, the ferry to put it on.
And there was an exchange of correspondence between the agency and Angloco.
Fire service and Angloco.
And what was the basis of the final payment being made? Because the contract was for the delivery of the boat at Port Georgetown.
I will allow the former permanent secretary to respond.
Honorable Member, because the boat was completed and the training was done.
The contract stated Angloco is to build a boat and deliver it to Port Georgetown. Is that correct?
Yes, Honorable Member.
So I paid in full for a boat that is somewhere across the seas and it is not delivered in Port Georgetown. So what would have been the muscle to get Angloco to perform the part of the contract for delivery to Georgetown and not waiting on when it is convenient for them?
The contract stated that the final payment should be made before the shipping. So the final payment was made when the boat was finished constructed.
So the contract didn't allow for the final payment to be made in when the boat arrived in Port Georgetown?
No.
So, enlighten me more about this contract.
Honorable Member, with the contract with Angloco, the ministry usually, the payment terms was 47%
And 53%, right.
and 53%. The final payment had to be made when the boat was finished constructed and the training was done with the fire servicemen. They encounter a delay with the ship that they had to put the boat on. And that's why the boat was delayed.
For more than a year.
Yes, Honorable.
So when the boat arrived at Port Georgetown, what works needed to be carried out on the boat before it became functional, having been somewhere laid up for a year?
To my knowledge, no work had to be done on the boat.
You're
The
certain
boat-
about that?
To my knowledge, the boat was commissioned when it,
Besides the first correspondence that you read, explaining that the boat would not arrive when it was scheduled to arrive, was there any other further correspondence?
there were communication with the fire chief and the company.
Do you have those records here?
No, Honorable Chair.
So there was a consistent communication
Yes,
with
there was.
regards to the delay of
Yes,
the
there
vessel
was.
reaching Port Georgetown.
I had asked that a member from the Guyana Fire Service who was integrally involved in this to be here.
Do we have any member from the fire service here?
I'm not seeing him.
Honorable Chairman, I'm not aware that they're here.
You're not aware that
They're
they're
not
here?
The fire service is not here.
P.S. Let me advise you, when you're making an appearance to the Public Accounts Committee, bring representative from all of the agencies that comes under this particular
Where are their queries for?
where the queries for. All right,
Yes, Honorable Chair.
thanks.
Mr. Chairman, no doubt Angloco is a internationally branded company. I think anywhere in the Caribbean, all our territories are benefit from the Angloco equipment. I'm dealing here with contract management. Because when you pay money, you got to get a service. Was there any negotiated position between the government of Guyana, the Ministry of Home Affairs, and Public Security then, and Angloco that will compensate for not having use of the boat for a year because of shipping difficulties?
First, I have to establish if that was in the contract. Was that in the contract?
No, Honorable Chair, but the Guyana Fire Service was able to say what they would have benefited from the company, because usually if there's a delay, they would send them additional firefighting tools. They always donate things to the Guyana Fire Service.
So there was some benefit as a result of
That's
the
why I'm
delay?
asking the question. Because a responsible company like Angloco, who's not performing their contract, must have done something to compensate for that.
Yeah, they usually send them additional stuff.
So what we got?
I wouldn't be able to say at this point. The fire service
P.S. Can you make those findings
later.
in the week that is provided so that the committee could be apprised with what were the benefits of the delay with this vessel?
Will do, Honorable Chair.
I think, Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General would probably help PAC. But when you have $300 million and you don't have an item on the money market, how much we would have lost? At 1% per month on the money market.
Mr. Chair, where are we going with this here?
Just where it's going. When we spend money, we don't get the
myself want to
items.
know.
Thank you.
So we must weigh the benefits that we get compared to what was lost. Yeah, move on quick. Let's move on, quick.
Here, if I may.
Go ahead, FS.
I explained to both PSS, we had a meeting last week. I explained to them that making advance payments, those payments are not permitted or not allowed in our FMA. So that even though the practice might will be in for them to pay these reputable companies, right? Before they receive the items, they should stop that practice, because we are all aware that we are utilizing the cash basis of accounting, so that no advance payment should be made. And the second thing I told them was that when advance payments are made, should be these payments should be secured by a bond. In the event that things go in the wrong direction, we could recover those funds and thirdly, that they should stick to what is in the contract. Stick in the contract. Contract require that they stagger the payments, right? They should do that. So based on the meeting, that is what I told PFL.
Thanks, FS.
What they basically did was bridge that up by making that advance payment.
FS, is this information also placed in a circular that was dispatched to all accounting offices?
Mr. Chair, I need a little clarification on the FS.
Go ahead.
FS, I understand what you may be trying to say, but I have a little issue with the blanket statement you made. That, are you saying that the FMA Act does not allow for the payment of advance payments, and that all the while, even though the standard bidding documents, empty tab, everyone has in their bidding documents advance payments, that all of that is from years tenure being abolished and taken out, so there'll be no more advance payments made by government. So that means that the advance payments are illegal.
No, basically, that is not what I meant. In this particular instance, 100% was paid. That is what I was told, right? That 100% of what was due was paid, right? And so that is not allowed, right? What is allowed is what is contained in the contract document, and it would never be 100%. And what the contract document would also say is that those advance payments should be backed by someone, right? And in this particular instance, based on our conversation last week, the payment was not backed by any bond.
Mr. Chair, follow up.
Go ahead, Member Patterson.
When you use advance payment, you use it very generally. What you're trying to say is that the FMAA Act does not allow for you to pay in full unless you're delivered. Are you trying to say that? But I want to also put to you at FS that contracts, and I know for sure in the government, not to be from it, that you can sign a CIF contract, or particularly when you deal with manufacturers and those things like specialty equipment, they normally sign and say that their policies are FOB. And if you sign an FOB contract, that is an advance payment, but that is a contract document. So if you understand the difference, FOB is freight on board. So long as you put it on a ship, yes, you are entitled for your money. You know me, so I've been trying for you to ensure that you don't have very blanket statements made on these matters.
So Chair, what I'm saying is that in this particular case, in this particular instance, right, the money which payment was made, it was not consistent with our law, right? And I'm almost sure that it was not consistent with the contract document. I didn't have a chance to view the contract documents, but I'm almost sure it is not consistent with the contract document, because NPTAB, I'm not aware of any contract document that NPTAB approved, right, allows for 100% payment. That is based on my knowledge. So in this particular instance, Chair, right, the payment was not in keeping with the law.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to turn our attention to para 697 and 698 of, well, let me take it from the 2018 report, because it is the same para 811 and 812.
Before you proceed, Member Mike, FS, in light of the revelations here today, I believe it would be prudent for you to put those information in a circular and send it to all accounting officers so we won't have a repeat of this occurrence here that we have discovered. Go ahead, Member Maipo.
Sir, para 811 and 812 of the 2018 report, which corresponds with para 697 and 698 of the 2017 report, says here that the ministry is still to recover overpayments made on the remedial works to the floor, walls, roof, windows, and doors at the Albion Police Station in 2010 in the sum of 3.504 million. The ministry had written to the project consultant for a resolution on the matter, and the contractor has accepted liability. At the time of reporting, the ministry had recovered to date a total of 2.250 million from the contractor, leaving an amount of 1.254 million still to be recovered. This is a 2010 matter. Can we have an update from the ministry on this matter, please?
Repeatedly, the ministry has been engaged in the Ministry of Legal Affairs on the matter over the years.
But PS, this is a matter that was addressed in court, and an order was made for the contractor to repay the sum of 1.504 million. Are you aware of that?
Yes, Honorable Member. Yes, Honorable Member.
So what is the next guidance if this contractor is not honoring a legal judgment? Can we be guided, sir, by perhaps the Finance Secretary or the Auditor General?
So PS, have you written the contractor concerning these payments?
But the court ruled.
I know. You're reminding him of the court's ruling.
I am
Yes.
being advised by the Principal Assistant Secretary of Finance that they would have written him informing him of the court's
When
ruling.
was that letter written?
They were written to initially, not after the court ruling.
Well, if the court has made a ruling, then you should act on it and remind him that this is a court's ruling, and more so you can write the Attorney General Chambers and ask him to take further action.
Earlier, I mentioned, Honorable Member, that we have written over the years the Ministry of Legal Affairs.
Pardon?
We have written and have been engaged in the Ministry of Legal Affairs over the years.
No.
No, but
this has
if-
happened since 2010 and nothing has happened since. I'm saying to you, I think you need to take action now to ensure that this judgment has been satisfied. The court has ruled on it already.
Sir, but some guidance from you. Is it the ministry that will have to write, or is it the Guyana Police Force? I'm seeking guidance. Who will have to ensure that the court order is executed? If the Finance Secretary...
Who took them to court? Not the ministry?
Yes.
Good. The judgment is for the ministry.
Can we get the FS to provide some guidance?
FS?
The chairman is providing the guidance.
You like my guidance?
I missed the question.
Sir, with your permission, sir.
It's the ministry, sir.
Could you just repeat the question for me? I didn't get it clear.
I am asking for some guidance on the fact that an overpayment was made in 2010 for remedial works to Albion Police Station in the sum of 3.504 million. The contractor repaid 2.250 million and had an outstanding amount, and still have an outstanding amount, of 1.504 million. The matter went to the court and an order was made for the contractor to repay the sum of 1.504 million. I'm not sure when is it that the matter went to court, if the PS could provide us with that guidance in terms of when this matter went to court and when was the judgment issued. And given that the contractor has not repaid as yet, in keeping with the court order, can you advise us as to what is the next step to recover this money? And outside of that guidance, FS, I want to know when is it that the court order was made and what is the name of the contracting firm?
Chair, with your permission, once the court granted judgment, then the only thing preventing us from recovering the money is the willingness of the agency to recover the funds. There's no impediment. There's nothing stopping us from recovering the funds. So I will work with the agency to ensure that we go after the contractor.
So can I?
Yes.
No, thank you for that. That is in keeping with the guidance that was also provided by the chair, that it is the ministry who will have to go after the contractor. Can the PS provide to us the date of the judgment and the name of the contracting firm?
Honorable member, the name of the contracting firm is Fife Contracting, FYFFE, Building and Contracting Works.
Fife.
Yes. And to respond to you earlier, the court matter was around 2018.
2018.
Yes.
So the matter that the overpayment that was due in 2010 went to court in 2018.
Yes, honorable member.
Is it the same for para 812, where it states that a contract for rehabilitation of Camarang Police Station was awarded in 2010 in the sum of 3.348 million, and during that year, amounts totaling 2.391 million were paid on certified works. A subsequent payment of 697,150 in the year 2012 increased disbursements under the contract to 3.088 million. An inspection of the works in that year revealed that a total overpayment of 1.273 million had occurred as a result of 20 discrepancies in measured works. The ministry was able to clear to the satisfaction of the audit office an amount of $312,750, leaving a balance of $960,000 still to be recovered. This matter also was addressed in court, and an order was made for the contractor to repay the sum of $960,250. Is it the same position as the one before?
Yes, honorable member, and I would have also written letters to the legal affairs for advice.
So can I ask the name of the contracting firm for para 812, the one with Camarang Police Station? This is a matter again since 2010.
Ash Civil Engineering Work.
Ash?
Ash.
ASH?
Correct, Civil Engineering Work.
So, Chairman, given that the FS has endeavored to liaise with the ministry for us to recover these sums, I would like to rest my questioning at this point.
Member Siraj, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2017-690. The Auditor General noted here, Mr. Chairman, that $274.992 million were expended on communication and other equipment, including one German Shepherd dog. Mr. Chairman, the Auditor General also found that items to the value of items to the value of $9.6 million is still to be delivered. And I think the accounting officer in our response is still saying that items are still to be delivered in the year 2022 for contracts that would have been entered into since 2017, including automated fingerprint identification system and furniture. Can we get PSC get an update on this matter, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, PS.
Honorable member, I will allow Mr. Johnson from the Guyana Police Force to respond.
Good morning, Honorable Member. Jorman Johnson, Superintendent of Police, ICT Officer. Sir, in 2017, the sum that was paid for this machine, it was customary that 10% withholding tax and 10% withholding tax and you have the 14% VAT that was customary to when paying this money. However, so when the money was paid, it was short. So negotiations started with the company to get the additional money. Subsequently, that money was paid, but since we also had some other hiccups in terms of configuration for that machine, the supplier promised to get that machine in the country by the next month. As late of yesterday, there was an email with the supplier asking for a time frame, and they said in that email that they agree that they are responsible for the untimely delivery of the system. However, they said within the week they will give us a definite date of delivery of the machine. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
I don't see this paragraph being mentioned in the 2018 report. So am I to assume that it was clarified in full? If the Auditor General can provide us with the guidance.
Yes, we have the audit office.
Mr. Chair, I will have to follow up to see the reason why for my working paper. I don't have that information here. I will have to follow up.
Don't have the information that was just provided by...
No, I don't have why I left it out in 2018.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Chairman, notwithstanding the response by the agency, we're in closing off in April 2022. This was a contract that was signed in 2017. And I don't think that enough efforts were put into acquiring items and equipment that we would have paid for. And I think I just want, Mr. Chairman, if PSC can be given some assurance that the agency will follow up diligently in ensuring that items we paid for since 2017 are delivered.
Chairman, just allow me to correct. I just saw the para 808.
Mr. Chair, for the purpose of clarity in my mind, at 690, Superintendent Johnson indicated that some items are to be delivered shortly. What are those items?
Sir, the AFIS machine, it's a combination of hardware and software that take fingerprints and check it into a local and national database. Back in 2014, the American Embassy, along with the CBSI Caribbean Basin Initiative, donated, or maybe from a contractor standpoint, a set of machines. These machines allow us to take the fingerprint and add CID, analyze the prints. If I can recall, at the time of implementation, the then crime chief, I think Mr. Blanham, mentioned that long-standing murder case was solved immediately intervention of this machine. One was placed at Region 6, one at Region 4A, one at Region 3, at the time, which is C Division, which is now Region 4C, and one in Georgetown. So
Commendable. So why we don't have the machine yet? Yes. Commendable.
We did not get this particular machine here because of because of the money that was basically withhold based upon a policy at the time, which of the 14% and the 10% withholding tax, and configuration of these additional machines. Because this additional machine is supposed to go to Region 3, which is Lenora.
All right. So have these issues with the withholding tax and VAT and some been resolved?
Yes, sir.
And we're on our way to getting the machine?
Yes, sir.
All right. Was this machine sole source?
Yes, sir.
From a specialized company?
Yes, sir. Biometric for all out of the United States.
And that is compatible with the donation that was made through the CBSI?
Yes, sir. The same company will also have a maintenance contract with
all the machines?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
There being no other questions. P.S. I want to thank you and your team for, one second. Yes, thank you, PS and team, for making an appearance to the Public Accounts Committee. Please remember you have 1 week to provide PSC with the information and to provide it with 25 copies each, and also to send it via email to the clerk of the Public Accounts Committee. Do have a enjoyable rest of the day. Thank you very much.
If I may, I know the last time when we met with the Ministry of Public Security, there were some concerns about the adequacy of communication and information flow. And we did ask the team to get their house in order. It is obvious that from today's meeting, the PS and the former PS were able to collaborate, and I think we should take note of that. And PAC have been helped by the answers that were offered, and I think this is the way that we should ensure that every agency that is coming before us, we have the full collaboration. Thank you very much, sir.
Noted, Honorable Chairman. Thank you, members.
Go ahead, Member Mike.
Chair, I want to join and say that it's admirable on the part of the ministry after they would have returned in terms of their collaboration and ability to satisfy the Public Accounts Committee with questions relating to the queries in the Auditor General report.
Yes. Thank you very much, PS. Yes, FS. FS?
So hopefully it will generate the same something. Yes, Chair, and say that we present a different.
I didn't hear you, sir.
Now, and I hope that we continue with the approach to that PSC. So let me thank two PSS, right? So we work together to ensure that get the right the PSC and the persons who are listening to these areas. So thank you, PSS through the chair.
Okay, FS, the committee would have made a decision with regards to that officer who we were persuaded was misleading this public accounts committee. And we were advised, the committee made a decision for you to launch an investigation, but I was so advised by the clerk of the National Assembly that investigation should be led by the Auditor General's office. So AG, we're asking you on behalf of the committee to exercise that responsibility. Thank you, PS and team.
Good Chair, my understanding is that I could also.
Well, we like to have a joint effort then. Thank you.
PSP and or the police.
Good. We appreciate it. Yes. Thank you, PS and team. Do have a blessed afternoon. Members, we'll break for 1 hour and then we will continue.